Jackie?
Yes.
I can't hear Monica.
Okay, she's gonna try calling in and doing audio over the phone since her computer audio seems to be having some problems. So I'll give her just a minute to get back into the call.
This is our first meeting with our new internet connection in our new office. So thanks for being patient with us while we work on the new issues.
Yes, for those that didn't note on the agenda, we have moved offices. We just completed the move, and so we're just a few blocks away. Our entrance is still on Main Street. So the new address is listed on the agenda.
Okay, Monica's in and on the phone. Can you hear us, Monica?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
You're a little quiet, but yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and try to call the roll here. Okay, we have Director Jim Brown.
Present.
Director Larry Stransky.
Yes.
Director Richie Wasserman.
Yes.
Director Tess Albin Smith. Director Haschak.
Here.
And Director Rex Jackman.
Here.
Vice Chair Michael Carter.
Here.
And Chair Dan Jurdy.
Present. Okay, thank you. We've conducted roll. We're going to convene as the Regional Transportation Planning Agency, immediately recess, and reconvene as the Policy Advisory Committee. And the first thing on our agenda is public expression. Do we have any members of the public who wish to comment on items that are not on today's agenda? Monica or Nafili, have any members of the public contacted MCOG wishing to speak for today's meeting?
We have not received any general public comments.
Okay. All right, well, not hearing any, then we'll go on to regular agenda, which the first item on our agenda is the Technical Advisory Committee recommendations of August 19th, which is approval First Amendment for the fiscal year 2021 for Transportation Planning Overall Work Program.
Hey, good afternoon. This is Alexis Pedrati, and I hope that I am coming through okay. And if it seems to become a problem, I've got kids online with school, so I hope that things stay this way. I do first want to apologize for sending out the revised information this morning. It seems as though I inadvertently missed the carryover page to update the carryover funds exactly as it needed to be in the First Amendment. So I do apologize for that, and hopefully you guys received those few pages this morning with the yellow highlighted included. So with that, I will go into the report and follow up with any questions. I included a staff report for you guys. On June 1st, we adopted the final 2021 overall work program totaling $968,745. Before you, I've presented the first amendment that was reviewed by the Technical Advisory Committee at their August 19th TAC meeting, and it was sent on, and they did recommend the document for approval to the board. The first amendment is basically carryover and reprogramming some of the planning funds that are coming in from the 1920 overall work program. In the staff report, I itemized it out by each work element and where you can see some of the carryover funding coming in. It is very typical in the first few months of the new fiscal year to see an amendment that brings in the carryover from the previous fiscal year. Included in this amendment, you'll find RPA funds, which are rural planning assistance funds, the PPM, which are the planning, programming, and monitoring funds, local transportation funds, and some of the state planning grant funds. Under each work element, there is the actual dollar amount that was carried over. I'd be happy to go through this. Work element 1, the regional government intergovernmental coordination, total of $2,023 of RPA was carried over for this element, and some additional LTF, which also went into an additional work element for direct costs. Work element 2, which is the planning management and general coordination element. This is a non-RPA funded element. MCOG staff had a small remaining balance of $6,052 of LTF funding. These carryover funds were actually added to the project reserve fund. MCOG closed the year, and bringing in new money, we were able to adequately fund what we owe the planning contract. And so this money was actually set aside into the reserve account. Work element 4, the sustainable transportation planning. There was a small amount of unexpended RPA funds totaling $651, and they were also carried over into MCOG staff's work element 1 budget. Work element 5 was the SB 743, the VMT regional baseline study. This project was closed out last year, but there was a small amount of unexpended LTF funding that was left over. The $627 of remaining LTF funds were added to the project reserve fund for future use. Work element 6, which is the county DOT combined special studies, they requested this work element again this year. And so we went ahead and added the $791 of remaining funds from last year into their current project this year. Work element 7 is the planning, programming, and monitoring element. There was a total of $40,112 in additional carryover funding. Previous to this amendment, in the final, we had an estimated amount of $35,000 of RPA funds in this element. So we did only bring up the RPA to the actual carryover of $2,694. So the total carryover was only 37, let's see. The total carryover for this element was $37,694. So because we estimated $35,000 in the final, we only increased this by $2,694 of RPA and $32,893 in PPM funds. Work element 8 is the Fire Vulnerability Assessment and Emergency Preparedness Grant. This grant was carried over. There's no further work being done, but we do have the retention that needs to be released on this project as all of the final work products are received. Work element 14 is training. There was a total of $41,041 in carryover funding being carried over and added into this work element. Work element 16 is the multimodal transportation planning. A small amount of unexpended RPA funds for staff has also been brought over from 1920. Work element 18 is the GIS activities. Again, this element also had a small amount of unexpended RPA, which was brought over into this current OWP, and a very small amount of LTF remaining of $100, which was added to work element 2 for direct costs that we may incur during this year. Work element 20 is MCOG grant development and assistance. Carryover funding for this element was $6,145 of RPA funding and $8,665 of LTF funds. The RPA was carried over and added to this element along with 686 of LTF funds, increasing this work element to $31,831. The remaining $7,979 of LTF, this again was reallocated to the project reserve element for future needs. And here at the bottom, I mentioned the project reserve. This element included 11,800 of new funds when we approved the final OWP. And as the close of 1920 happened and we had some smaller pots of money that was able to be included into this project reserve element, we were able to reallocate into the reserve, bringing the total to $33,779. The proposed amendment would increase the OWP at this point from $968,745 to $1,083,936, an increase of $115,191. As I mentioned before, I do apologize for the corrections I had to send out this morning. I did include the entire document, the first amendment, in the original email. And you would be able to see the bold and the strikeouts in that entire document that was included in the board packet. I would be happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
Do we have any questions from board members? Okay, not seeing any. Thank you, Alexis. We might entertain a motion to approve the First Amendment.
So
Move
moved.
to approve First Amendment.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Director Carter and a second by Director Hashak. Any discussion on the motion? Perhaps you could conduct the roll.
Director Brown,
Yes.
Director Stransky,
yes,
Director Wasserman,
Yes.
Director Housecheck,
Yes.
Director Jackman,
Yes.
Vice Chair Carter,
Yes.
Chair Jurdy.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Now we're on to adoption of Resolution 2020 approving the 2021 project list for the California State of Good Repair program.
Yes, and let me just note before we start on that, it looks like Director Albin Smith has joined us, so welcome.
I've been in the waiting room a long time.
Oh, I'm so
Oh, dear.
sorry. I guess there were some recent changes to Zoom and now they're requiring more security features with all meetings. So I guess we'll have to get used to using the waiting room again.
All right, I can take the next item if that's all right, Natalia.
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, so this is the State of Good Repair program, and that's a transit capital program from Senate Bill 1 funding. And we received a request from Mendocino Transit Authority to do two things. Revise an earlier year of funding, I'll get into that in a second, and to request a project for the latest year of funding, 2020-21 fiscal year. So in your packet, you've got my little summary of that and a letter from MTA, and I understand the board last week at their meeting approved that request on their end. And then there's a draft resolution and Exhibit A, which details the projects they would like to have. So the basic idea is that these funds are available to be expended for just 4 years. So the first year of funding in 2017-18 was programmed for MTA's new project, the Ukiah Transit Center. And they don't believe they can make that expenditure in the amount of time available. So they've asked that money, which is about $130,000, $1,995 actually. They'd like that to go to rehabilitation and facility upgrades at their Ukiah and Fort Bragg operations facilities. So that's that part. And then the new money, 2020-21, they would like to be added to the Ukiah Transit Center project. So that's about all I have on that. And that amount, the new money is $139,962. That's starting to climb up a little from about an average $130,000 a year we've been getting in. So I've got James Sukna here to help me with any procedural questions. He's a little more familiar with the program than I am, but at this point, all that's necessary for MCOG is to approve the request by resolution. Are there any questions on that? It's pretty straightforward action they're asking for.
Yeah, and this change allows MTA to continue saving for the long-term transit center project, which is still in pretty early stages of project development, but then they'll be able to utilize the older money immediately, which has some timely use of funds requirements attached to it anyway, so they can use those older funds for immediate needs and continue to save for the long range project.
That's right. And because those rehabilitation upgrade projects are new projects that Caltrans has not seen yet, those are going on the fiscal year 2020-21 list. And all of these details get uploaded to the CalSmart online program that governs and keeps track of all these projects.
Would someone like to entertain a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved. House
Second.
check.
All set.
Okay, Monica, did you capture that? You could call the roll.
Director Brown?
Yes.
Jansky?
Yes.
Wasserman?
Yes.
Alden Smith?
Yes.
Paschak?
Yes.
Jackman?
Yes.
Vice Chair Carter?
Yes.
Director Jury, yes. Okay, if we could go on to the consent calendar as one item, approval of the August 17th minutes. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the consent calendar?
To accept the consent calendar.
I second that.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Could you conduct the roll?
Director Brown?
Yes.
Jansky?
Yes.
Wasserman?
Yes.
Alden Smith?
Yes.
Paschak?
Yes.
Jackman?
Yes.
Vice Chair Carter?
Yes.
Chair Jurdy?
Yes. Okay, now we're going to recess as the Policy Advisory Committee and reconvene as the Regional Transportation Planning Agency. Do we have a motion to ratify the actions of the Policy Advisory Committee?
I will move that we ratify.
A second.
Thank you. Can we have a roll call?
Director Brown?
Yes.
Jansky?
Yes.
Wasserman?
Yes.
Alden Smith?
Yes.
Paschak?
Yes.
Vice Chair Carter?
Yes.
Director Jurdy, yes. Okay, thank you. Now we're on to reports. Do we have any updates from Caltrans?
After I got myself unmuted there. Just a couple things. Follow up on the presentation on the planning portal tool from last time. I've kind of concluded that a lot of the shortcomings from that presentation, some of the shortcomings were related to bandwidth and browser issues, and also some were related to the presenter, me. But afterwards, going over what was going on, I think for the most part, actually, I think the presentation that we had for you guys for MCOG actually was the one that went well. It was the one in Lake County where I had some shortcomings. So I'm demonstrating my own confusion this morning. I did get some reports prepared this morning, and there was a little bit of confusion as far as which reports needed to be distributed, but we did distribute reports on current projects, current construction, as well as future projects. And those should have been, I think they were just the correct reports, I think, were distributed just at the start of this meeting. If going into the future, we're working on getting the project manager's name included in those reports and their contact information, so that I or you will have a little bit more of a direct route to getting questions answered about particular projects that are going on. So that should be helpful when referencing just the report, and when you're not actually digging into that interactive website. If we have the project managers there in the report, it'll make it a little easier for the folks that aren't using the website to find out who has the detailed information. The only other thing I wanted to mention is the sustainable planning grants, which happen regularly. The new application is going to be out to be distributed. I think it's scheduled to happen this week or next week. And with the closing of that application process will be early in 2021, January or February. Those deadlines will be announced with the application when it goes out, and we'll be distributing all of that information, and our planning staff will be available to help with individual agencies that are preparing grants for that cycle. We're always willing, and we try to be available to review draft applications by any of the agencies that might be putting together one of those grants, to try to make it the best application possible. So we're looking forward to that and getting geared up for that process. And we'll also be participating in the evaluation of the grants, which will occur right after the applications are received, and they should be announced. The grants that are approved should be announced in the spring. So if anybody has any questions, I can do my best to answer them as far as current projects or future projects. Feel free, and if I don't have the answers now, I'll do my best to find out and get back to you.
So I have just a couple comments. So it looks, Rex, it looks like in your report, so current projects are those that are happening this current construction season. Some of them might be a 2 construction season project. And then
Yes.
future would be anything that's in the next construction season or fairly near future following that, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then just so board members know, the planning grants that Rex was mentioning, those often fund planning projects in MCOG's work program, either MCOG projects or for local agencies. An example is the VMT baseline study that we just completed that was funded through one of the planning grants, as well as the fire vulnerability study, although that was that particular planning grant was a climate change adaptation program, which is not available in this current, will not be available in this current cycle. And so Rex, I'm just wondering, because these, when we apply, and I do anticipate that we'll be applying, it would be for the next fiscal year's work program. Is there any chance that the delay in starting the application cycle is that going to be a problem in terms of including that in our final work program for next year, or will that part of the process still be on track?
I'm not sure if that's going to impact things. In the past, I think if there is a need, we can always get an amendment done if that's required. Otherwise, you know, I think you should be able to put in what you know at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see any reason that it should impact the ability to get those applications validated. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I think so. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. And we all know how to get a hold of you, Rex. So thanks. We may be sending you emails as follow-up, but thanks for your report. Mendocino Transit Authority, I saw earlier Jacob, the Executive Director of MTA. Are you still on the line, Jacob?
I am. I don't have anything prepared. I just like to thank this board for passing that resolution about the state of good repair, and also the appreciation from my lack of experience, all the help that I've gotten from the MCOG staff.
Okay, thank you, Jacob. North Coast Rail Authority, do we have any updates from them?
This is Loretta. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I emailed with a gentleman at headquarters. I've been following up on the SB 1029 NCRA assessment report. That report was due in July, and about a month or so ago, I was told that it was just about ready to be released. It was being finalized. So I checked again in the last few days and asked for a new update. They could not give me an update, but it's getting close to releasing that report that was done in July, and that's a full assessment of the NCRA line. So as soon as we get that report, we'll let you know. And then as far as meetings, the NCRA board canceled their quarterly meeting that would have been in September. So the next meeting is scheduled to be in December.
Okay, thank you, Loretta.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the next thing we have on the agenda is just a summary of meetings, which we have in our packet. Nafili, would you like to highlight any of those, or do we go on?
I don't have anything to highlight, but I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Okay, seeing none, we'll go on to MCOG administration staff. You've already mentioned the move in location to 525 South Main Street in Ukiah. Do you have any budget revenue financial update?
Yes, I've got that. Well, I'm pleased to report that the revenues have been coming in better than expected. It's surprising to many of us how well the sales taxes have come in. So for the fiscal year end 2019-20, We got over $4.1 million in the end, and that's a little over $250,000 above and beyond the budget estimate from the county auditor controller, and that's up 6.7% for the year. So we're very pleased with that. And also, so those are revenues through the end of the fiscal year that come in August. So we didn't know until then how the year would come out. So the first revenues for the new fiscal year came in pretty strong also, and those arrived to us in September. And those are largely an advance from the state controller. So it's still a little bit unclear how well those sales taxes will perform. So there are a lot of unknowns for the new fiscal year. We're waiting to see. But the point is, we're starting from a strong position with reserves going into this uncertain new fiscal year. On the other hand, the state transit assistance, which is from gas taxes, didn't do as well. Those are a little down. Let's see, they came down they came in at 15% below what was estimated by the state controller. And all this is in my one-page staff report you have there. And also the state controller's estimate for the new fiscal year was revised downward by another 41%. So those aren't performing as well. People aren't traveling as much. And so I assume that's why those revenues are down. But in any case, we do have enough in the fund that had not yet been allocated to fulfill the budget allocation for MTA that they've requested. So, so far we can meet the fiscal year 2020-21 claim from MTA as things stand now, assuming those revenues come in at the revised level. And finally, just to point out, you know, back in May and June, when we were talking about the budget and a likely need for an amendment, we still don't know. That remains to be seen. What we had discussed with the county auditor controller was that he wanted to see a full quarter of actual revenues come in before he revised his estimate. So given the 2-month time lag between when those revenues are collected and when we receive them, that means we would not be making any kind of budget amendment before our December meeting. So we're okay until then. We have enough money in our funds to get through until then. And so that is where the Transportation Development Act TDA funds stand. Those two funds, the local transportation fund sales taxes and the state transit assistance gas taxes. And those are the majority of our budget. So, you know, we have some other types of funds in the budget that we could talk about also, but those are the most important ones right now. Any questions?
So I'll add, as far as, you know, our operating funds and transit operating funds, you know, these are the primary things. However, the same revenue that affects the STA funding will also likely affect our future STIP funding. So, you know, that's the fuel tax, that was strengthened through SB1, goes into a number of funding pots, STA being one, STIP being another. So we can anticipate to see the impacts of this in other areas as well.
Right. So I've been talking about the funds that come in as cash through MCOG's accounts. And of course, the STIP funds are different. We don't actually handle that cash, but we do program those funds.
Right. So that'll be something wouldn't be part of MCOG's budget, but that we would be seeing when we start talking in development for the next regional transportation improvement program. So.
Right. So we're in surprisingly good shape for this stage of things right now. And that's all good news. I assume there was some amount of tourism on the coast over the summer that you probably are aware of. And so, you know, still some sales taxes coming in, people shopping online. And, you know, the county gets a share of that, of some of those, you know, sales taxes that come to the state of California. I understand some kind of pool where those sales taxes come in and we get a share of that. So we're getting by so far, but we'll keep you informed on that.
I was just going to add to your enthusiasm. It seems that the construction, grocery, and auto industries are doing great. Not necessarily sales, but gas tax and all that. At least in our city, that's where we're seeing those are the biggies for sales tax for us, and we're doing pretty well on that end. Not so great on the little boutiques.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of pain and suffering out there, and a lot of businesses are having a hard time. And this is just kind of the overall big picture, what comes into our coffers. So.
I have one question regarding the what maybe a reduction in projected STIP revenues because people are traveling less, therefore there's less gas tax. Maybe one thing that the MCOG TAC could look at is if at least to look at a scenario where perhaps there might be some federal stimulus infrastructure funding that might come through in the next year, that maybe that could be used to shore up some projects that are more or less shovel ready. So I understand what you're saying, that you're expecting less STIP funds because the reduction in gas sales, but it does seem quite possible that there could be a federal infrastructure bill passed in the next 12 months, I would think.
Yes, that's sort of what we've been hearing in terms of the next stimulus bill, is that there would be more, well, there would be a focus on infrastructure, whereas the previous have really been on sort of keeping operations going, a big focus on transit. And so that's something that we could definitely look at. We won't know the overall impacts to the STIP, to our next fund estimate, until August of next year. So depending on what timelines are associated with any kind of stimulus funding, hopefully we would be able to consider the future impacts in the STIP when determining how to use that stimulus funding, assuming that it were to come to MCOG. It's possible that stimulus for construction projects could be distributed directly to cities and counties as well, or some combination of the two.
Okay, thanks. Do we have any other questions or comments? All right, not seeing any. We'll go on to, do we have any other updates on the active transportation program? Applications are due September 15th.
Yeah, so I'll just go over the staff report that I included in the packet. So speaking of STIP, when we adopted the 2020 STIP, which would have been in December of 2019, at that time we let the board know that we would be working on an active transportation program grant application to fund construction on the Wallala Downtown Streetscape project. So those applications were due September 15th, and we worked closely with Caltrans. We're really appreciative of all the effort that District 1 staff put into that. It was really a major group effort. Those applications are very time consuming. For any of you that, if your local agency staff is ever working on one of those, know that they are working really hard on those grant applications. It does, however, look like in this particular round of grant funding that the Gualala project was the only application that was submitted in Mendocino County. So that went in September 15th. We won't know until about February if that is successful. I also on that project reported at a previous meeting that the design team on the Walla project had determined that in order to construct the alternative that had been previously supported by the community, that some retaining walls would be needed. And we along with District 1 staff thought that that was unlikely to be supported by the community. And so we sent out a notification to community members. We also used that as an opportunity to collect safety information from them. So one part of the active transportation grant application is looks at safety. So it's a big part of the scoring for that program, focuses on safety, because there's not an accident, there's not a significant accident history in Wallala. We needed to be able to document a lot of the near miss instances, which we know that those happen. And so we reached out to community members and asked them to use an online tool to report their the safety concerns that they've experienced in town. So we did get a lot of good participation on that, and we've received feedback from the community as well about what they'd like to see in the project, knowing that we'll have to make some changes to avoid any kind of major retaining walls. So we are planning a public forum. It'll be hosted by MCOG staff and Caltrans staff, tentatively scheduled for November 12th. To allow community input, to present them with the current situation and allow feedback on what alternatives we could consider now, knowing the constraints that we're working with. So we will, once we have a firm date scheduled for that, we'll be sure to let MCOG board members know, and we'll also be working with District 1 to determine the best way to publicize that. And so I would encourage any of you, if you have contacts in that area, to share that information once we do get that distributed. So that's my update on the Wallala project, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Nafili? Not seeing it. Thank you for the update.
You're welcome.
And thank you for the application.
You're welcome. Fingers crossed that it will be a worthwhile effort.
Okay. Any miscellaneous reports?
We have a miscellaneous planning report, but nothing miscellaneous for admin.
And we see that our next meeting is Monday, November 2nd. It's a regular first Monday of the month. Okay. I guess on to planning reports.
Thank you. I have, let's see, a couple of reports. First of all, you see the same note that the planning staff for MCOG has also moved. So Davy Bates Consulting as well as Down Associates has moved to our new location, and just a different suite number, same address. And then secondly, the 2022 Regional Transportation Plan. I wanted to give you an update to tell you that we are starting the update process for the next RTP. The current year's work program includes a work element 9, to update the RTP as well as the active transportation plan, which is part of the RTP. And the last RTP was adopted on February 5th of 2018. So the 4-year update cycle would require that we adopt it again by February 5th of 2022. And we're now in the process of beginning to review the guidelines, the new requirements, the new checklist, seeing what's changed. We'll begin with doing some local agency outreach and an estimate looking at our public outreach needs. A lot of the public outreach will be virtual, depending on what changes with the local pandemic. This is a long project that's going to go into the next work program. So we'll initially have virtual public outreach, and then I don't know about the future, that could be in person. The project will be carried over to the next work program to complete it, and I hope to adopt it by December of 2021. It's due in February. We don't meet that January, so we kind of don't want to wait till the last meeting, but that's our plan. It's one of the biggest things that MCOG does in RTPA, this adopting of the RTP. And Nephili, do you want to?
Sure, I'll just add a couple things. So the update to the RTP will also incorporate an update to the active transportation plan, which is essentially the non-motorized element of the regional transportation plan. So this effort will encompass both of those. And also just a note on the timing. So we now adopt our RTP every 4 years. For board members that have been with MCOG for a long time, you may recall that we used to update the RTP every 5 years. However, several years ago, we opted to change to a 4-year schedule in order to allow a shift in our regional housing needs assessment schedule. So by updating our RTP every 4 years, we are able to extend the regional housing needs allocation and then local agency housing elements to an 8-year update schedule. So that's a big improvement for that part of the planning effort. So that's why we are now on this 4-year update cycle. So that's all I had to add to that.
Okay, and I will also note that the RTP includes an environmental component, an environmental review process. So the last time around, we were able to have a negative declaration for that. So we presume that would be happening again for that. And like I said, we're just now starting it off. So you'll be hearing about it over the next few meetings. We'll try to keep you updated with what's going on and reporting on that. That's all I have for that. And then under miscellaneous, I have 2 items. The first item is on our fire vulnerability assessment evacuation project. As you know, the MCOG board had a presentation in August, and the board accepted those fire grant documents. And then we wanted to let you know that the consultant category 5 also presented them to the Board of Supervisors on September 22nd. And the action of the Board of Supervisors was to receive and file the vulnerability assessment and the public outreach plan, and to adopt the evacuation plan as Annex A to the existing county emergency operations plan. So we're happy with that action. We are now in the process of wrapping up the grant. The final documents have been posted by Janet to MCOG's website, so they're easily found there. And we're happy to wrap up this project. So that's my report on that. And then the last item is on the local road safety plans. Local road safety plan. Yes. I want to make sure I had the right title. This is work element 11 in MCOG's work program. And you may recall in the work program, the 3 of the 5 local agencies, the County Department of Transportation, the City of Ukiah, and the City of Point Arena had been approved for funding to have local plans developed. But funding for Willits and Fort Bragg had been pending. So we learned in the phone call with Caltrans last week that funding has been approved for all 5 agencies. So we are going forward with an RFP that will be released next week. But I will be coming back to you, Lexi will be coming back to you for the future work program amendment to add the funding into the work program for those agencies that have been approved. In addition, the county's funding is being increased the county was told last week in the call with Caltrans that they could request additional funding. So the Department of Transportation did in fact request additional funding last week. So Caltrans local agency staff assures us that that will be approved, but they have to go through the process to actually do the paperwork. So a contract will not be signed until all the funding's approved, but we are going to release the RFP and get it started advertising. So we wanted to give you just a report on that. So all 4 cities and the county will be getting the local road safety plans. MCOG will handle procuring a consultant to develop all the plans rather than each agency having to go out with an RFP and doing their own bid process. And this was something that that was discussed by the TAC and the local agency. Just doing RFP for that. So are there any questions about that?
Loretta, I might just add on to that, I'll need to amend a couple of those sub-recipient agreements with our member agencies. We knew about some of these grant awards when I was preparing those for the new fiscal year, and now we have a couple more. So I'll be reaching out to the city managers and staffs to get sign off on that. So what we have with our member agencies, the cities and county, is a master subrecipient agreement that spells out the terms for receiving the funds through MCOG of all the kinds of funds that we have that flow down. And every year I issue the scope of work and budget for the funds for the year. So those went out, and I've got some of them executed and back, but I'll probably have to amend. I will have to amend several of those agreements. So notably, the latest ones that came in, right, Loretta, Willits, and Fort Bragg, we didn't know about those before. And I'll have to amend those agreements, and also the County Department of Transportation, who's getting additional money. So anyway, that's kind of the paper trail that goes along with this. In case that comes up with your staff, you can expect that.
Good. And I'll just add that the reason that we are doing these local road safety plans is to allow local agencies the ability to apply in the future for the HSIP grants, Highway Safety Improvement Program grants. In the future, local agencies will be required to have these local plans. The current cycle, it's not required, but going forward, it will be a requirement.
Just briefly, I have a question for the HSIP funds. Is there a minimum vehicle per hour, per day on a road that would be a threshold, minimum threshold to apply for those funds?
James or Nafili, I know those are mostly safety related. I don't know that they relate to VMT. James, do you know that?
HSIP is strictly data driven by traffic accidents. So VMT, you can be on a local road, you can be on a major collector. You just have to hit the basic benefit cost ratio, which I believe is 3.5 this cycle. So.
The one exception to that I'll add is the set aside categories that are included in each HSIP funding cycle. So in each cycle, they determine specific categories that agencies can apply for. It's I believe, a simplified application, and the applicants don't have to meet the cost benefit threshold to apply. So in this particular cycle, which applications are due October 12th, I believe. So we are in contact with some local agencies who may be applying, but the set asides this time are for pedestrian crossing improvements, tribal transportation projects, guardrails, and was there, Loretta or James, was there a fourth, or was it just the three categories?
I believe it was just the three.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in those categories, they are smaller projects, so the funding limit on most of those is 250,000.
Right.
So,
And I just want to clarify, and if you leave the HSIP deadline is October 19th.
thank you.
Mhm.
I might be able to add just a brief clarification for Chair Jurdy. Your question about a minimum traffic volume, I think it's more based on the relative amount of collisions for similar facilities statewide. So if it has a low traffic volume, it would need it would have to have a relatively high number of collisions based on similar facilities. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
And this particular funding source hasn't been used widely in Mendocino County in the past. I know the County of Mendocino has used it, but I think it's been several years. And then currently the city of Ukiah has a grant. It's actually part of the downtown improvements that are happening right now, is funded through HSIP. However, there have recently been some changes at the state level that will now, that it is a federal program. However, changes have allowed those funds to be exchanged for state funds. So that'll make it more appealing for some of the smaller agencies moving forward. So these plans will be important for them to have as we anticipate a higher use of this program.
Yes, and I would like to add, there are 4 categories in the set aside. I just pulled it up. Guardrail upgrades, pedestrian crossing enhancements, installing edge lines, and the tribal set aside.
Well, can I ask a question? So this may not be related to guardrails, but on the coast, there are a couple of county roads that are eroding due to, cliff erosion. And so the road at some point will need to be realigned inland a few, several feet in order for the road to not drop down to a single lane road or just disappear as a through road. Are any of these funds made available for projects like that?
So just off the top of my head, I would say that type of project would not fit the HSIP program, at least in this round, unless they, expand requirements in the future or maybe come up with an additional set aside category. But, that would be a realignment, not necessarily something that could be solved with a guardrail. And so that kind of rules out the guardrail category. And for the general HSIP project applications, it has to be based on accident history.
May 5th, 2020.
Okay. Director Alban-Smith?
Yes, I was just wondering, Dan, are you talking about the big dip in Albion where all the trees died and all that?
There are probably quite a few. I'm thinking of the one over the old Highway 1 that's now County Road over towards Casper South Point Carrillo Drive. Okay.
I just had a comment about the really awful thing happening over in Albion. Years ago, I was pulled out as a forester to tell people why there are dead trees all along that bluff there. And walking around, I discovered that Caltrans had rerouted a drainage from the east side of the highway under and over to the west side. And all those trees were dying because they were drowned. But what they did was they turned a 1-inch dip into a now, I guess, 6-foot trough of water that is just taking that highway away. So I just thought I'd mention that. Sometimes when they reroute the water, they don't really think about the outcome later.
And that's on the highway on Route 1 itself?
It's, I think it's just past Albion.
Okay.
Yes. So the erosion I was referring to had to do with Point Carrillo Drive, which there's a section that's it could easily in the near future drop down to a single lane. Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? Are there any director reports?
Well, I guess this is John Heschek. I was on a call with Carmel Angelo when the NCRA report came up, so I don't know if Loretta gave it, but basically we haven't had a meeting since June, and the one we were supposed to have in September got canceled. So no news on that front. I'm sorry about missing for this.
So John, I just wanted to let you know that I checked in with the state on the NCRA assessment report that was due to be released in July, looking at the entire line. And they tell me that it's due to be released any time, but I haven't heard any new dates. I checked last week and it's just expected to be released any time. It was supposed to be released in July.
Right, and I did talk. Oh, I did talk to Jason Lyles, Senator McGuire's chief of staff, and he said that, you know, a lot of stuff is going on with it. So I expect to see that out soon. So thanks, Loretta.
And I don't have any more details for you on that, but and Loretta, you may already know this, but Lashara Ward, who used to work in District 1, is in Sacramento, and I believe that that's her principal responsibility, is continuing work on transitioning NCRA into the Great Redwood Trail, I think it's called. And I believe she may even be the person who's preparing that report. So you might be able to get some inside info by contacting her directly. Thanks.
Right, Rex, I did reach out to Lashara, and she put me in touch with the gentleman who is in charge of releasing the report. So I have been emailing with Lashara, and she's very involved. I think she just wanted me to check with him on the release date. Thank you.
Okay, you're ahead of me. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, are there any other director reports? Anything from the California Association of Council Governments?
I don't have any update from CALCOG.
Okay, well then at 2:33, we'll adjourn our meeting of October 5th.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Hey,
Thank you. Bye-bye.
take
Thanks,
care.
everybody. Bye-bye.
Everybody.